He influenced a generation's sound, yet was never its spokesperson, while others taking center stage. He created the spirit of the music behind the glass. From quiet Benny Andersson, from studios to international stage, scented the ascent, the disintegration, along with the revival of one of pop's finest famous bands. However, the tale he's only disco balls aren't the subject of telling anymore. Sequence, it has to do with fatigue, regret, broken love, and the agonizing quiet that came after the cheers, following decades of conjecture. Benny Hay stated in his reality is more profound, depressing, and more illuminating than anybody anticipated, constructing a sound kingdom, prior to everyone dancing to the music whip to the dancing Queen Ortho, winner takes it all's gloomy already. Benny Andersson was occupied with shaping the unseen basis of what would be among the most enduring in pop music INHERITANCES. Born at the Vasan on December 16, 1946. Benny was born and raised in the Stockholm neighborhood, a middle-class home where music was a treasured hobby rather than a career path. Custom. As a civil engineer, his father and his self-taught granddad performer presented Benny with the 6 years old and playing the accordion. That modest instrument would reveal a fascination, using harmony and melody that would never get away from him. In contrast to many of his peers who yearned for fame, but Benny lacked motivation by a wish to be noticed. He was more eager to learn how music worked based on the mathematical framework off-batch to the rustic tales of he learned Swedish folk tunes on his own piano by ear and was able to mimic tunes after listening to them only once or at 10 years old. He was already playing at school and family events performances. Not renowned for being a showman, yet because he is naturally sensitive to tone and feeling. When Benny was just 18 in 1964, joined the Swedish rock group Heap Stars. Band that would eventually be referred to as the Beatles from Sweden. Since his arrival, their sound developed virtually instantly. Their group started to dominate the Swedish charts, with popular songs like Wedding and Sunny Girl, songs that Benny wrote himself. These early achievements not only shown his capacity to compose catchy tunes, but also refined his abilities in the studio, setup and live performance. He swiftly gained recognition as the band's musical intellect while also subtly gaining knowledge of the technical and commercial aspects of thas. Next came a crucial evening in 1966. Bernos and Benny first met when they were performing at a party for mutual acquaintances. One of the folk pop group's members, Benny's love was shared by hootenanny singers. Of detail, harmony and arrangement. Night's jam session resulted in an immediate collaboration in music. Above they started writing in the ensuing years, jointly experimenting with various structures and fashions, and even writing music for other Swedish artists. Their relationship of cooperation deepened. Robust, not only due to yet as they were in balance with one another each other flawlessly. Benny, the sensitive Bern, the clever lyricist and composer. By early in the 1970s, Bern and Benny weren't not just co-authors but also collaborators in Ignia, and to other musicians live Sweden's top-charting solo artist, Fältskogana Frida. Linkstedt, an artist and pop vocalist who transitioned from jazz with a strong alto voice. Their collaborative musical endeavor apart with the long name Bern and Oni Fried, Agnetha and Benny. Though the name seemed awkward, the chemistry was electric. They attempted to win but were unsuccessful. Sweden's choice for Eurovision. In 1973, they returned the following year, unfazed. With the glam pop anthem Waterloo, which won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1974, and immediately made them global stars. Soon later, they decided to adopt an acronym, ABBA, or a more memorable name utilizing their first name's initials. Because of that, Benny was no longer merely a pop performer. He was a song. Every song he performed was layering tools, painting, putting together voice harmonies with accuracy and experimenting with long before it became popular. SYNTHESISERS. He was well known in the studio for his tolerance and meticulousness. A single harmony for Desantal. It was emotionally appropriate. Hadn't care about what was in style. What was timeless piqued his curiosity. While Agnia and Frida were shitting audiences wearing jumpsuits that match, Anbern wrote witty, melancholy lyrics. Benny was responsible for shaping the emotional melody of ABBA's subtext. His signature style combined depth with brightness. A melody disguised as melancholy in Sweden. Compositions such as Knowing Me, Knowing You, and this duality was carried by Fernando, joy on outside, melancholy beneath. That Benny's gift extended beyond pop music. Also to listeners for centuries who felt something more profound in ABBA's apparently easy tunes. To be honest, Benny Andersson wasn't merely writing songs, he was establishing a kingdom in which everybody caught each note, each stillness was important. Additionally, even though the spotlight frequently played elsewhere, the design of there was no mistaking ABBA's voice, climbing higher, falling apart. For ABBA spent the most of the 1970s riding an inexorable surge in popularity. However, as the band gained popularity, it started to decline. In private, it didn't unravel all at once. Like a house, it was slow and subtle, not destroyed, but worn by time by means of fire. In 1979, the first crack appeared when Bernagnatha and I got divorced. It was profoundly a break for myself, but one that the band attempted to weather professionally. During that moment, the team was working on its Super Trooper album. And even if the songs kept their distinctive shine, the sessions took on a new burden. Tone. After 2 years, Benny and Freda took the same route. Previously, the relationship was described as symbiotic and furious, an authentic tale of musical romance. They first connected in long before ABBA, in 1969, and constructed a connection by music before anything else. Otherwise, in a 1975 interview, Freda once commented in a view which Benny comprehended in, and like anyone else. However, comprehension did always translate in the studio, becoming actuality. Benny's compulsive he was brilliant because of his perfectionism. Limited space in the studio for emotional openness in the house. Fred impassioned and expressive, sensed the increasing absence. In 1981, Benny Agnelito have developed feelings. For Mona he met a TV producer named Nerklet. At a special broadcast, he said the truth, Freda, but the harm was, the separation was professional and discreet. Even yet it left a lasting scar on the dynamism of the band. The following and last studio record, in the same year that Visitors was released, mirrored the environment of emotional frost. In songs, such as When Everything Is Said and Done, dripping as it passed through my fingers with unsaid suffering. The glimmer was diminishing, and even if the group would keep going for another year, something vital had already vanished, verifying the quiet we all experienced. Fourth tale of ABBA's end, spanning more than 40 years, was not characterized by dramatic headlines, but by an overwhelming quiet, in contrast to most iconic bands that leave with a farewell tours and a press conference, a conference, or a last release performance. ABBA just disappeared. They're Under Attack, the final official single, was December 1982 saw its release. It was unable to provide the effect of their previous hits. No follow-up was conducted. Album. No global tour, no closing remarks, merely a slow descent into the haze, often speculations and conjecture that would span several decades. Their lack of presence left a void, and something entered that void. Countless inquiries. Why did they halt when their success was still so great? Does money destroy them? Was it intimate, drama, tension in the creative process? None of the band members provided a conclusive response. Interviews continued. Unclear. Term hiatus was in vogue, and they stopped making public appearances. And cautiously courteous. In numerous respects, ABBA turned into a timeless myth, the ideal pop group that just stopped exist inexplicably, not until November 2024. Though Benny Andersson has a reputation for being quiet self-reflection and avoiding personal set down for an interview for publicity alongs The Guardian, he didn't show up with a practice story. There wasn't a statement prepared by a publicist or PR propaganda that has been airbrushed. Rather, Benny did anything uncommon. He was honest. Clearly, we were worn out, he said. Admitted marriages were dissolving. The music was beginning to play strange. We had to pause in order to protect ourselves. That straightforward, unimpressive assertion struck more forcefully than any scandal could within a few sentences. Benny affirmed what many devoted fans always have suspected. The split had not resulted from treachery or creative rivalry. It had originated from emotional exhaustion, following several years of recording, performing, and preserving the appearance of happiness when behind them. Their private lives fell apart. The group was exhausted from the scenes, not deathly, silently, tragically. Afterwards, in April 2025, Benny delivered an Billboard follow-up interview, providing even more profound understanding. He outlined the last 2 years of the band. Workdays in 1981 and 1982 were uninspired. What was once a dynamic partnership had become the norm. He and Bern continued to write, but without the same vitality or intention. There were more tunes. Slowly, the meetings in the studio were shorter. Everything had begun to feel not a passion, but a job. Even more the way Benny presented the group choice to halt, he didn't refer to it as a failure. It was not romanticized by him. He characterized it as an unavoidable coming apart. It could no longer be sustained. He said we couldn't continue to act as though not to ourselves but to one another. This recognition wasn't merely enlightening, it was restorative. 4 fans had heard that last ABBA song for decades. It felt different listening to albums like The Visitors, more reflective and depressing. Songs like An Angel or one of Used Traversing My Room, and the dated and sound depressed before you arrived. They were depressed. There was a sense of weight in the arrangements and lyrics that revealed something more profound than poop turns. It was sensed by listeners, even if they was unable to identify it. Benny's admission conferred that emotion. The pain, the feeling that something is falling apart underneath glossy exterior, wasn't a projection, it was authentic. What's remarkable is it not one of Benny's disclosures held resentment. He failed to put the blame on Freda or Bern rather. He discussed the band's demise like a natural outcome, such as a lovely device that had reached the end of its life. We did what we could, he stated. We had nothing left to offer, to be honest. Fans saw it as the conclusion. They were unaware of their need. The enigma was no longer a mystery. The quiet had a motive. And above all, the anguish that had reverberated throughout ABBA's last songs had a name now. Fatigue, emotional breakdown, and the silence need to leave Frida's journey through royalty and sadness. Following the silent breakup of ABBA, Frida go out on an adventure that no one can fully anticipate. She wed Prince in 1992, Plowens Henrik Russo, Royce, turning into a member of the European royal family. The journalists went crazy. How could the same woman who used to dominate disco floors currently reside in a castle in Switzerland, attending banquets and galas? However, life since becoming a princess wasn't the ideal scenario. Seemed to be Frida had trouble with the stiffness of aristocratic standards, the enthusiasm and spontaneity that characterized as a performer. She didn't belong in the regulated realm of kingship. Then followed the most devastating heartbreak of her existence. In 1998, Anne, her daughter Lisa L., lost her life in a vehicle accident in New York. Her age was only 30, though the loss was heartbreaking. The singer who used to perform for millions of people sought quiet, distraught within her remote residence, close to Lake Geneva, the glamour of monarchy and her previous notoriety. Everything looks pale in contrast to the void created by her daughter's absence. However, Benny was the one who surfaced in that period. In spite of everything he said, they exchanged a history that no one else could comprehend. And during their silent reunion, there was ease, not by living out the good old days, but with the knowledge that there are only two those who witnessed the collapse of everything apart may actually share. Frida, who formerly required attention to feel noticed, had now discovered contentment in just existing, not by the entire globe, but by someone who knew her before anything. In 2018, returning without regret following for decades, the unimaginable occurred. To record 2 new songs, ABBA got back together. The music was surprised by the announcement. The world, not only because it brought an end to 36 years of quiet, but because it signaled the start of among the most ambitious endeavors throughout the history of music. Voyage. ABBA, Benny and Bern had by 2021 created a studio album that is full-length. With the same name, and Benny had taken complete authority over production. However, merit was the performance rather than the song. Model that brought to a complete transformation. ABBA Voyage was not a concert in the conventional sense. It was a digital encounter. With motion avatar technology and capture, Benny and the group reproduced their 1979 song themselves, with a performing live band in a specially constructed London arena. The success of the show was astounding since its May 2022 opening. It has sold more than 1.3 million tickets, drawing in admirers from almost 140 nations. The virtual personas did more than simply imitate. They went beyond what was anticipated. Hey Benny, always the artist, managed even the simplest aspects of sound design, demanding that the performance is genuine, technically accurate, emotionally accurate, perfect, and probably most astonishingly, the band turned down a $1 billion deal for a live tour. They had no desire to pursue the previous peak. Rather, they reinterpreted for and according to their conditions. The characters, like Benny, it wasn't necessary to be perceived as being felt. The music was the voice of them as usual, allowing the music to tell the truth. Benny Andersson, now 78, is no longer conceals itself in a studio or flawless harmonies. Walls. Recently, he has been interviewed bisolently releasing decades of emotional self. He acknowledged that music washes getaway. He was at a loss for words. He wrote it instead, because it was about agony. I gave my best lines too, he once said. Songs, but to those who required them listened to them from me. That sentence, so straightforward, and unvarnished from everything we believed to be true. Benny wasn't chilly, he was afraid, terrified to face the feelings that world of breakup has a love song underneath it. Every hit that concealed pain was a ballad, and that quiet and that terror are what finally brought the band to an end from within. Just frailty, without drama or treachery. The human tenderness that comes with celebrity was never ready for them. However, his honesty has a certain beauty. Due to be uttering these words out loud at last, what ABBA never did is what Benny is doing. Providing a resolution. He is stating that perfection was never the goal. It was always about surviving. The tune didn't relieve them of their suffering. It was the way they survived it. And maybe the songs have endured because of this. There were imaginations that were never perfected. They were actual, disorganized and complex pieces of 4 individuals attempting to contain them. And now, following all of this, the silent man behind the piano has let us in at last. What do you think? What might ABBA's songs have sounded like if they had instead confronted their feelings directly, or via their music? Tell us in the remarks. Additionally, if this story moved, please remember to like, share, and for more impactful music, subscribe. Travels.